Hey, hey. You know, as I look around me, I'm surrounded by my friends, my family, my lovely YouTube companions in life, and I think to myself, I truly do possess the infinite wealth. The infinite wealth was the essence of friendships we used along the way. Man, I really need to buy that fucking 7-star rainbow crystal upgrade to this nunchaku set. If only I had infinite wealth. So I beat Yakuza 8. It was long as fuck. It drained me of my life, my spirit essence, and many hours from my Death Note clock span. I guess I'll give a little non-spoiler section and then a spoiler section. We'll give that a go for once. Okay. Did I like the video game? This video game. Yes! Overall, yes. I didn't make a review per se of Yakuza 7, but I did include it in my 2020 end of the year review, where I described all the ways in which it disappointed me. And for context and explanation of that, I liked the game, and I enjoyed it and loved it, a lot that was in it, and yet it still disappointed me. And it left me with a very strange feeling that I've had very few times, really incomparable to any other experience I've had, a very unique experience, where the weirdest part of Yakuza 7 was that, like I said in my 2020 video, everything that I do love, and earnestly love about Yakuza 7, I already loved before the game released. I love Ichiban, I love the concept, I love the vibe, I love the energy, I love the stupid bullshit, etc. Genuinely, all of my strongest feelings, all of my strongest positive feelings that I have towards the game were already there. Every single one long before the game came out. Then, playing the game, it had all that stuff. It's not like it was just like a fantasy and that the actual game sucked. It had all the stuff that I knew that I loved about it and in it, but it also had shit that I realized that I hated. It had gameplay issues, it had plot issues, etc. I think now that this is actually probably a problem of marketing in a weird way. I mean, it's a very unique problem, but I think it is a problem of marketing because I gotta say, this Yakuza 8 is a long fucking game, and almost nothing that happens in it wasn't clear from the trailers. Maybe the last act, like the last third of the game, has a bit more stuff that wasn't obviously apparent from the trailers, but like, the first half of the game, you can legit skip, and if you watched the trailers for this game, you would not be missing any crucial information. Overall, I have my issues with this game, but I also enjoyed it, kept going through it, kept wanting to play more of it. I didn't want to put the game down or anything. It's a fun game. It's just, I don't know. I kind of feel weird about it. Let's start with gameplay. In terms of systems, great improvements from the previous game. I do think that some mechanics, such as combo attacks, unlocked via the Drink Link system later in the game, are a bit overpowered with their capacity to generate MP like crazy. One of the changes is that almost every single class generates MP through normal attacking and lots of other attack interactions, and all combo attacks generate MP, and the most MP physically possible from an interaction for both characters used in the combo attack. Even if one of the characters is using a class that does not generate MP from attacking, they will still generate MP from a combo attack. So that, I think, is fucked up in terms of the balance, but overall, love the system-level changes. Walking, positional-based indicators and mechanics related to them, guarding and guard breaks, back attacks, etc. All of the system-level stuff is great. This game kind of devalues crit rate more than other RPGs, since a lot of the things in the game just will automatically trigger crits anyways. If you hit an enemy in the back, if you hit an enemy while they're down, you just get an automatic crit. So having a high crit rate doesn't really mean much. Just an observation. I never wanted to build or buff my crit rate in any way because of those factors. The systems are great. My issues with the gameplay come more from the design habits than the actual overarching systems. Just most of the encounters, I would say 97% of all fights you do in this game are just you beating up the same general number of like maybe 4 to 8 mook enemies that you can just fucking steamroll. The game as a whole is much less punishing than 7 was. 7 would fuck you up in arguably unfair ways at times, but I had maybe 3 party members ever even go down throughout this entire game. No game overs, never had 2 party members down at the same time, never. Just completing basic shit gets you really overleveled really easily in this. 7 was more dependent on vaguer and less reliable stats like accuracy and evasion and shit. Like, even if you were at an appropriate level and buffed like your attack and defense and debuffed the boss's attack and defense and such, you're still taking a lot of damage, and very frequently. And like evasion was one of the more like risky but valuable things you could do, and this game has a lot less of that. A lot of the debuffs are nerfed in this game. Things that were strong in the previous game, like poison, not very strong in this. The other major changes are that fights are just much shorter in this game. Regular mook fights and bosses. You just do basically a million of the same fights. You fight another crowd of like 7 guys. They all go down in like 2 or 3 hits maybe. You just fucking stomp them, etc. There are not a lot of full-on boss fights. There are a lot of mini-bosses, which also are very repetitive and meh. Like this group of enemies will have some mini-boss type enemy that isn't really that threatening either. The game has interesting mechanics in terms of your characters, what your characters can do and your options, but they're not very interesting fights in terms of the enemy's behavior and the enemy's capabilities. The full-on boss fights exemplify this. Like in 7, it felt more like a classic RPG in that you get your resources stretched very thin by the tougher bosses. They take a lot out of you, and you're kind of scrambling to keep yourself alive a lot of the time. And in this, MP is a free-flowing resource. You regen MP like crazy just by attacking. I never used a single usable item in this whole game. To Yakuza 7's credit, I rarely use usable items in JRPGs, but I use them in Yakuza 7 because it's just, like, very punishing, and it's designed in such a way that you really ought to have to use items in it, but you don't have to in this. Tendo in 7 took like 25 fucking minutes. It's a grueling fight. It's a full-fledged fuck you JRPG boss fight. The final boss in this game took like 5 minutes. And he was the most threatening fight in the game. He was the most deadly, etc. fight. So that should say something. But yes, I like the job classes, I like the class building, I like the gear building, etc. It's cool, it's fun. I like doing the stuff in the gameplay. It's just the fights could have been more engaging. And diverse. Story is where I'm more conflicted. I broadly find the dialogue and the scene writing and direction in this game to be not very good. Super cliche, super fucking poser shit, fucking cornball horse shit. That being said, there's nothing in the story that I find to be quite as stupid or offensive to my sensibilities as the plot holes that I disliked about 7. The 2 new characters, Tomizawa and Chitose. I like Tomizawa, dislike Chitose. I feel like there are a lot of overarching views on these characters and events that have changed in the development process that I don't understand. Like, now the whole story, the entire tone of the story is acting like being a Yakuza is a bad thing, and it always was and always has been. The way they characterize Ichiban, I find to be quite different from the previous game. I feel like Ichiban is much less complex of a character and rich of a character in this game, and he just feels like a walking cliché now. They go out of his way at every point to reinforce his corny, simple traits. It's difficult because the story wants its purpose to be about Ichiban's personality, but it also wants to dumb it down to the most cliched himbo, good guy, always shonen protagonist, whatever, ever. By the end of the game, I kind of liked Ichiban again. I liked him more in 7, but and not as I liked him in 7. I liked him as in 7 as like this complex character who engaged in this real struggle of purpose and identity at the turn of 40 years old, his midlife crisis and his unique take on a middle-aged character, whereas this Ichiban could be replaced by any shonen protagonist of any age, any fucking teenager, and the story would barely change. I came to appreciate him by the end as like a stand-in Luffy type, like an unchanging icon more than an actual complex character, but I still prefer Ichiban in 7. Another thing that I don't love is the changing of the team dynamics. I don't love that all the female characters have to have romantic interests in the male lead characters. I thought that was cringy and lame and boring. On the comedy end, I had quite a lot of good laughs, and a lot of stuff was like going through the motions. There's only so many times you can basically tell the exact same joke about, like, I don't know, some guy in a dumb outfit being a weirdo in public. So, at a certain point, I just started skipping a lot of the sub-story cutscenes because they're just so fucking samey. And the actual funny parts of the sub-stories are usually the gameplay bits that it forces you to do anyways, even if you skip the cutscenes. Speaking of side content, I looked up how long to beat, and they said that the main story was 30 to 40 hours, which I think is probably technically correct, but you have to understand here that this game is like 1 hour of main story, and then 5 hours of side content, over and over, for fucking ages. Even the required objectives will constantly veer you off into side content. You have to do multiple days of Dondoko Island as a must before being allowed to continue in the main story, etc. By the midpoints in the game, I found this very exhaustive, but by the ending, I didn't give a shit anymore. I did most sub-stories in the game, and I wanted to like beat all the mini-bosses that hang around in each area, all the star enemies, and I also finished all the Drinklings and maybe leveled up like a few job classes here and there to like try to get certain moves and mess around with them and maybe grab some stats. And I don't feel like I did anything excessively grindy in this game. And yet I was over-leveled to fuck for most of the game, and the game took me ages to finish, as I get an hour of actual plot and then 7 more hours of optional bullshit and time just sinking away. I didn't do any like mini games, any darts or any of that shit. I didn't do all the table chats. I only did like 2 stars of the Dondoko Island shit. I beat the main Sujimancer quests and that's it. Got all the Kiryu Awakening stuff, or did the reminiscences and the main Kiryu enough to just unlock the final cutscene for the Kiryu Awakening stuff, and that's pretty much it. At a certain point, I was just exasperated with how slowly the fucking main plot was progressing per hour of my existence. The plot honestly doesn't have that much complexity to it. It really doesn't. It just takes like forever to do like a few basic things because the side content eats away so much time. And I liked Dondoko Island. I actually wanted to do more of it, but like the game took me so long to finish, and I had barely played Tekken 8, which launched on the same day as this game. So, you know, it's not the fault of this game that it came out on the same day as Tekken, and there's also other things I wanted to do with my life at this point in time. I'm just saying that that did have an effect on me as someone who's a bit more pressed for time than normal. But yeah, I like a lot of the silliness in the game. There were lots of bits that made me laugh or chuckle. I like Tomizawa. I think Kiryu is the best part of this game, especially in the first half of the game where the other characters, and especially Ichiban, are not succeeding at carrying the weight, and the plot has yet to do anything that you haven't already seen in the trailers, and yeah. Okay, spoiler territory now. Going into spoilers. I will spoil. There will be an infinite wealth of spoilers ahead. Okay, fuck off and die. I don't care. So I think this plot is more coherent than the plot of 7, like I said, which hinges on some incredibly dumb bullshit, characters magically predicting the future, shit way into the future, and characters making completely irrational decisions. The plot in this game kind of confuses me, if I'm being honest, because for basically the rest of the game after they find Ichiban's mom, I couldn't really follow what the conflict was. The Yakuza series in recent years has this tendency of taking something really mundane and then trying their damnedest to explain why this seemingly mundane thing is actually the most important thing in human history, and just you've been sleeping on how important this everyday normal thing is. The empty lot, the World War II ship in Yakuza 6, and now this shit with Nele Island. So in this game, the point of the plot is pretty much that they do everything in their power to make this private island seem like the most powerful force in the universe. There are two main villains, Bryce and Ebina, who are working together but have slightly different plans, and both of which both characters insist that everything in the universe hinges on the ownership of this one private island. Bryce is apparently immortal? They casually mention multiple times that he's like 100 years old, and they just never explain that. So that's fine. So Bryce's big plan revolves around his using of his private island as a dumping ground for nuclear waste, and I guess theoretically anything else people want stored or thrown away. I'm not an expert in international law, but I don't really understand, like, if just any random schmuck can offer their private island as a dumping ground for nuclear waste, or, fuck it, any private I mean, I guess private islands maybe don't have to answer to the exact same laws as private residences in, like, a country, but why hasn't that already happened? Is there really so much profit to be made from this? This dastardly plan? I mean, his plan kind of revolves around a level of trust that I don't see how he could possibly generate. If his plan is to hold on to dirty international secrets and then use them as leverage to influence other countries, obviously that would require him to have enough trust for these countries to share their secrets with him in the first place, so it's very much circular reasoning here. The evil plan is that I will gain influence over the world because everyone in the world will just tell me their secrets because I own a private island. Fucking nonsense. As far as I can tell, most of the plan, like 80% of the plan, is actually very above board. For a lot of the game, I kept asking myself, okay, but what is the actual problem? It sounds like they're doing a more or less completely legal, publicly acceptable thing. For a lot of the game, the only context we have for even thinking that something shady is going on is just because we know that the evil guys are evil. We don't know what they're doing that's bad, we don't know what they're planning that's bad, but we're just very confident that they must be doing something bad because we know that they're evil. And fair enough, I guess, they are clearly evil, but still. It's very strange to constantly be trying to fight against something, and you have literally no idea why, because you have no idea if something bad is even happening or going to happen or not. As far as I can tell, the public-facing plan is they're going to turn the Yakuza into a non-profit organization and send all the Yakuza as laborers and employees to work on this island managing nuclear waste disposal. So, no real problems, just legitimate work. What I understand is that their actual evil plan, the evil parts of this plan, are that the nuclear waste management does not meet safety standards, and that the Yakuza being sent to the island for legitimate work are actually going to be sold into slave labor? ? I don't know how that would work out. I mean, I'm sure that there are more Yakuza than there are members of Bryce's coalition of Haku warriors on his island. How could they be put into slavery there? I feel like if you send thousands of Yakuza to a single private island, they could easily revolt and take over the island, even if you hold them up at gunpoint or something, and then just steal a ship and leave. But whatever, apparently the conflict is that they're somehow going to be put into slavery. It's shocking just how much both Bryce and Ebina's plans did not really require either of them to kill a single person, and yet they both kill people constantly because they're evil. Like, Bryce could have easily done this plan with only a few minor changes and done nothing evil or criminal at all. I guess other than desecrating a religious site, or the fact that he murdered that guy 70 years ago. But, like, beyond that, like, if Bryce wasn't an illegitimate sage, and it was just the actual sage decided to do this, he could have done this without any illegal actions at all. As far as Ebina, I don't understand the legal logistics of his plan to enslave the Yakuza. Like, I feel like if you run an NPO, and you publicly ship all these ex-Yakuza guys overseas to this island, this private island, people would eventually notice that no one ever comes back from this island? Like, you have to keep sending ships to there, and then the ships have to, like, hit a port and then leave, right? Like, how does this physically occur? Ebina tries to explain in Yakuza writing fashion how this private island, you don't even understand, bro. It's so important to have a private island for this. But, like, if all you wanted to do is just convince people to get onto a ship so you can get them out of the country, and then you just want to kill them or torture them, couldn't you just, like, ship them overseas and then just, like, take the boat out or throw them overboard or something? I mean, okay, think about this. Ebina has one single actual ally, which is Eiji. Every single other person supporting Ebina or working for Ebina or doing work that furthers this plan is doing so without knowing what Ebina actually wants. Most of them don't realize that Ebina is actually planning to screw them over. You could easily stop Ebina's plan by just telling the people working for him that he's trying to have them killed. How would Ebina manage this slavery and or the killing of the Yakuza? Like, how would he avoid anyone finding out that he's killing thousands of people? Logistically, how does this work? Other than that factor of confusion, his plan actually does make a lot more sense than a lot of the bad Yakuza villain plots from other games, which are usually dumb as fuck. There's just nothing about this plot that really justifies how much weight they give to this one fucking island. Anyone can buy a private island. Ichiban owns a fucking private island with Dandoku Island. The other thing is that the first half of the game is consumed by this hunt for Ichiban's mom, which is retroactively silly because it's incredibly circumstantial to everything else. Akane just happens to be the person that is sheltering this little girl, who randomly happened to have announced very recently that she's the true sage of Palakana right before all this shit started. Now, I do agree with Bryce and disagree with the protagonist on this point where he argues that it actually doesn't matter. Because he says that, I think that at the point that he's at, where you have an army of loyal servants who willingly kill themselves for him and will do anything for him, I doubt you could just walk in and say, oh, this is actually the true sage of Palakana by birthright, and just suddenly remove his power from him. I just constantly think back to that scene in Season 1 of Game of Thrones, where Ned Stark goes up because he has a piece of paper, because King Robert said that he was supposed to be Lord Hand, and then Cersei tears up the piece of paper and is like, we have a new king now. Yeah, and then no one does anything, because yeah, it doesn't really matter. You need people to give a shit about your birthright claims for your claims about legitimacy to matter. And I don't think cultists will care about that. I also think it's a real fucking misplay. Maybe it's not a plot hole, but it is a dumb-ass action from the villains to lure Ichiban to Hawaii in order to draw out his mom. Like, why wouldn't you want this to be done more in secret? Why bring attention to this thing when the entire point of this is to not bring attention to it? Why bring other badasses who will learn everything about you and then oppose you? It's also obviously silly that they eventually find his mom just because they randomly talk to one lady in the city who just randomly happens to know where their mom is. Also, Yamai as a character could have been cut from the game and nothing would really change. I generally like Yamai, but it's incredibly obvious that he's just a red herring nice guy who has no stake in the plot. It was wild to me that the second to last chapter of the game was consumed with learning more about his bullshit backstory that I don't give a fuck about. It's very strange to me, after Kiryu gets doxxed online, that the story, in every way imaginable, continues on while pretending like his cover was not just blown. It's like the doxing was just an afterthought. He doesn't really respond hardly at all to it. the fact that he was called out online. It wasn't even really relevant to the villain's master plan to dox him. It's not really relevant at all. Like, I guess it generally helps them make this argument that old Yakuza are bad, and, like, it's good to do Ebina's plan, but I don't think that would help you pull in more ex-Yakuza by attacking one of the most popular Yakuza to ever live. And also the plan was already basically finished by then, because he was already about to ship people overseas, so that part was just kind of irrelevant. And sure enough, they really don't acknowledge the fact that Kiryu got doxed, basically at all, until, like, the epilogue. I hate Chitose. When she was first explained, I hated her. And then when her character was retconned much later, it was slightly less stupid, but I still hated her. Your first explanation of Chitose is that she's a rich girl with zero connections to the criminal underworld in Hawaii as an exchange student or whatever, who is working part-time to pay her bills, even though she's rich, because... and which is apparently illegal, whatever, and because, I quote, because this is the only explanation that she gives us, this is direct quote, "Rich people are stingy." That's her only explanation for why she had to work part-time. Rich people are stingy. So that either means she's stingy and thus wanted more money? Probably not. What it more likely means is she's saying that her parents are refusing to pay for her rent while she's abroad for some fucking reason, thus forcing her to work part-time, even though it's illegal, which makes no sense because her parents would apparently be very upset if they found out she was doing something illegal, so they won't pay her money, but they would be upset if she was working part-time, so already completely nonsensical, makes no sense, fucking stupid. So this girl, working part-time illegally, then breaks into the house that she was working at because Akane hadn't paid her because she went missing, to find her paycheck or something? I don't think that's how paychecks work, but whatever. So she breaks into the house, and that's when Ichiban comes by. She doesn't want to get arrested for having worked part-time, or more significantly, the breaking and entering that she was doing right there, all of which stemmed from her parents not giving her money to pay her bills. So, immediate course of action. As a girl who has never done anything criminal in her entire life and has zero connections to the underworld or anything, her immediate decision upon Ichiban, like, finding her here, and by the way, Ichiban did not find her, quote-unquote, she opened the door for Ichiban. She did not have to do that. She could have just said nothing, and Ichiban would have just assumed that no one was home. But whatever. She willingly invites Ichiban, then drugs him. So this is this normal rich girl. This was her immediate course of action, according to her, was to then drug Ichiban. I don't know how she had drugs available, like knockout drugs. She just carries those around, I guess. Steal his passport in order to gain entry to a local violent crime syndicate, the Barracudas, to ingratiate herself with them in exchange for, and I'm very unclear on this, to, like, erase her records or something? I was very confused about what she said that they were actually going to do for her, and how it would help her stop her parents finding out that she did something mildly illegal. My biggest problem with Chitose as a character is definitely that we're first introduced to the Barracudas when they take some guy into a back alley, they butcher him, kill him, string him up, crucify him. Kiryu, Ichiban, and Tomizawa all together find this. They are afraid. Even Kiryu is like, we don't want to fuck with these guys, let's go back to the hotel, let's not stay out here. Kiryu and Ichiban do not want to fuck with this group. But Chitose, some nepo baby girly who has never done anything hardcore in her life, basically never acknowledges anything strange or dangerous about throwing herself into the middle of this violent gang, and she just does so without a second thought, and never receives any, like, nothing ever bad happens to her. The characters don't acknowledge that this is weird or extreme or whatever, and it's fucking nonsensical for a relative, like an above-board normal person to do. Tomizawa, I find, is a character to be much more grounded. He's pretty simple. He was a small-time crook. He doesn't have crazy life experiences. He joined the party. He's reasonably afraid of the violent and powerful forces in the city. I should also mention that when Ichiban first meets Chitose, it was him going to her house. She did not have to open the door. Later on, this batshit series of character choices from Chitose are retconned, like, much later in the last, 4 chapters of the game, to be, okay, forget all that shit, or at least most of that shit. Okay, she's actually been an ally of Eiji, and by extension Ebina, for several years. The thing about her being Tatsura Channel is just so fucking stupid! Like, there's nothing about her as a character that connects her to the channel other than her voice. At that point, Eiji and Ebina could have just hired a fucking voice actress instead of letting Chitose in on a bunch of sensitive information. Why would they continue to blackmail and thus, give information to this girl who is not really part of their order and their organization and their plans just to use her as a voice actress for a YouTube channel? That's so stupid. If they were blackmailing Chitose in order to use her as leverage to take advantage of, her wealthy and powerful family, right? If they wanted to blackmail her to get an advantage through, I forget what her last name is, but her family, that would make sense to me. No, they don't do that at all. They blackmail her for literally no reason other than to use her as a voice actress for a VTuber. Then, I guess just because she happens to be in Hawaii when all this shit happened to go down, not because anyone planned it that way or whatever, they also just, when Ichiban arrived, I guess they just asked her to ingratiate herself with Ichiban. Now, apparently when this happened, she was already trying to look for Akane herself, just to do the right thing, I guess. I guess she felt like trying to look for Akane on her own, which is why she was at the house, and then why she went to the Barracudas, because she was also, I guess, investigating under the same logic that we were at the time, to ask the Barracudas what they wanted with Akane. So again, seems like an extreme step for a young rich girl who has never been in physical danger in her entire life to take, but whatever. Then, when she runs into Ichiban at the house, according to her, this was not something that she planned, and she drugged him and tried to get him arrested because she wanted to keep him away from this conflict for his safety, or whatever. This also seems stupid and dumb, but whatever. Dumb character. I don't like her. I don't understand her. I don't like her at all. I don't feel like she makes any sense. I feel like there's nothing in her moment-to-moment characterization or her overarching story that is interesting or reasonable at all. The Kiryu chunk of the story I enjoyed. I appreciate that a lot of Kiryu's is just like the gang giving Kiryu a good time while he reminisces, and he's not really part of the plot very much. I will say, at the ending, I'm kind of neutral on Kiryu's role in the finale. I think fighting Bryce and Ebina as the final bosses is a fucking joke. Halfway through the game, I was thinking to myself, I was like, okay, who could the final bosses in this game be? Because it would be really stupid for it to be Bryce or Ebina. What do I get? What do I get? Fucking stupid face. Stupid face. Shocked Pikachu face. Yakuza sometimes has this issue of, taking pencil-pushing bureaucrats that just sit behind a desk and make evil plans, but at the very end, they just take their shirt off and suddenly they're like a punchy guy. Mine, Iwami. I think Shibusawa rides the line, but I think he's the only one that works, because Shibusawa is not just Shibusawa is intimidating. He's a straight-laced guy that wears, glasses and a suit, but he's, an intimidating guy. He seems like a serious motherfucker, and he had also been doing serious, power play stuff, physical force and other things, much long before the actual final boss fight. Ebina, I think, is the worst out of any of these final bosses in terms of this. This small, short, slimy, chair-sitting, political weasel guy just takes off his shirt, and now he's stronger than Kiryu and 4 other badasses. It takes Kiryu and 4 other party members, 2 of whom are literally leaders of their own criminal syndicates, all ganging up, all 5 of them ganging up on just this one guy in an empty room, and they can barely defeat this fucking dorklet nobody? Shut up. Ebina is just some guy. He's pretty young. He's only been in the Yakuza for like 3 years, which was after the dissolution. So after the Yakuza already dissolved, which means he mainly moved up in the ranks due to sheer lack of competition and sheer lack of available staff. The lack of competition, there weren't that many badasses left in the Yakuza because there were so few people left in the Yakuza, and there's nothing about his life experience that would inform him of being like this strong, fighty guy. He hates the Yakuza and their entire way of life. Why would he have this energy and this... God, it's fucking embarrassing. Bryce, I'm more okay with because he feels like a magical old man, and you're fighting his coalition, not just him, and he also has guns. In 7, the power scaling is weird, because you can fight like a Yakuza boss, but then you can die to a hobo that's like 5 levels higher than you. But at least in Yakuza 7, despite the weird power scaling throughout the plot, you're distinctly playing as underdog characters who are constantly characterized as not as strong as the real heavy hitters in the series. Okay? You are not a match for Kiryu, you're not a match for Majima, whoever, whatever. The final boss is you and your entire team, more than 5 people, your whole team, barely managing to stand toe-to-toe with Tendo, this real fucking big tough guy, who, also, you got plenty of characterization beforehand about how he's physically strong, he's a really threatening Yakuza, and his, and like, even then, at the start of the boss fight, they have that conversation right at the start of the boss fight, with like, okay, this guy's boxing record, this guy's a serious motherfucker, and then Adachi's like, or Nanba's like, yeah, this guy's a serious motherfucker. But in this game, your team with Kiryu literally beats Majima, Saejima, and Daigo all together. Kiryu does this. But then he struggles against fucking Ebina? What is this shit? The other thing that bothers me in this story, okay, Majima, Saejima, and Daigo. I think the game wanted their return to be like this cool, triumphant moment, but I found it to feel so fucking pathetic. Like, cause them coming back after just one stern talking to from Kiryu, it means that they really were... These 3 major characters throughout the series really were just sitting on their asses like pussies for 3 years, doing nothing. They really were just lame cowards the entire time, just being stupid. And then Kiryu talks to them one time and they come back? That's pathetic. That's just pathetic. Also, Kiryu's whole thing about confronting the past of the Yakuza. 1. Again, this game acts like it was always bad to be part of the Yakuza. The Yakuza are always bad, which was never the point of the series and never the point that the series made. But Kiryu has basically the same storyline in this that he's had for the past 4 fucking games. Like in Yakuza 4, Kiryu comes in the end and he's like, I'm sorry, it's my fault that I put you in this difficult position, Daigo, but I'm through running away now. He proceeds to beat the shit out of Daigo and then not do anything fundamental to change the actual situation. In Yakuza 5, Aizawa confronts Kiryu about him leaving as the 4th chairman and thus putting the Tojo in a shitty place and just not being like, not utilizing the fact that he's a cool guy, etc. He keeps having this same conversation about not making the Tojo better back when he was the 4th chairman for like 2 seconds. Like, it's fine, but we've done this dance before, guys, and more people than Kiryu did things and were responsible for things. And also, Ebina's tragic backstory is that he had a single mom and that she died when he was like in middle school. Wow, how tragic. No one has ever suffered more than Ebina. Like if you cry every time. At least with Eiji, he actually had, like, a normal life, and then it got ruined by the Yakuza. Ebina was just like this middle-class kid whose mom got sick one day. I don't like Ichiban in this game. Like I said, I think they dumbed him down, simplified him, They turn him into just really extreme cliches. He has like 20 different verbose power of friendship speeches in this game. He's just like a fucking bad anime character. Every fucking scene you get some moment where people are somehow surprised at the cliched thing that Ichiban says, and they go, wow, what a guy. And that happens about a million times. A million different times. Like, they're like, I know you probably hate me, and Ichiban's like, actually, I don't. And they're like, gasp! You can predict every word out of Ichiban's mouth an hour in advance throughout this entire game. I just don't like him. I don't like the dialogue. I don't like this shit with Psycho. I don't like them as a couple. I don't like how juvenile they both are in the relationship. I don't like that Psycho put him on blast for over a year over basically nothing and ended their friendship over basically nothing in the most childish, petty way imaginable. Just like the previous game, the drink links are mostly more of the same, some boring distraction of a subplot. They all play out very similarly to each other, etc. The group dynamics and all the table chats and the party chats and stuff are fine. I find them charming enough, I like them, but they do kind of bleed into each other in a way because it's mostly just one or a couple of them say some silly shit in a comedy routine. At a certain point it changes from these characters feeling like taking them from the plot and then making them feel like normal people who chat and seem like totally normal people. And it turns into each character as a vehicle for these predictable comedy routines, where one or more of them say some weird, stupid shit, and then one or more straight man character for the scene points out that they're being a weirdo. End scene. A lot of the chats feel like any character could have said any of the lines and nothing would have changed. Again, I can't overstate how long-winded this game is, especially when the first 30 hours of the game are comprised of nothing outside of shit that was in the trailers. Despite its length, the game does not feel like a big adventure. It feels like a very short story, actually. It feels like it could take place over maybe a week. The characters who have no need to be separated for the whole game, they just don't talk throughout the whole game, and they're totally separate. Just because one group is in Hawaii, the other group is in Japan, and neither one of them are doing that much, honestly. Just not a lot happens in this story. Like, you hit Hawaii, you go to the house, you go to the Barracudas, you go to the casino guys, the Ganze or whatever, who are in the story for like 4 seconds, you learn about Bryce's bullshit, you find Akane just by sheer happenstance suddenly, Lani gets kidnapped, go and collect her before she gets sent off to the island. That's also stupid. The villains had like a million opportunities to get Lani sent to the island, but they just failed in every way imaginable, and the heroes just stopped them before that happened. And then there's the final chapter. On Kiryu's side in Japan, nothing he does is really vital to the plot. It's just him learning things, but nothing he does really matters. Even talking to Sawashiro only results in him going to find Majima, and the others, which only results in them showing up to beat up a couple chumps in the final battle, which was also probably unnecessary to write into the story, and that's it. Kiryu's side is more about him coming to terms with dying more than it is about him involving himself in the crime drama, and that's fine by me. I totally have no issues with that, but the game just doesn't feel like much of a grand adventure or conflict. It plays this fucking, like, epic JRPG music in the final level while you're going up Millennium Tower, and all I could think was, this conflict is not that epic. It really isn't. It's not like, very large scale. You could end the conflict easily. This instance does not matter that much. And it hasn't been not a lot of stuff has actually happened. It hasn't been some long, grueling adventure. Oh, also, Ichiban's mom could not have less emotional weight as a character. The other thing that I hated about Ichiban in the early parts of this game, and throughout the entire game, is that they did... The context of the game is that Ichiban's in Hawaii looking for his mom. They do everything in their power at every turn to make sure that Ichiban trying to find his mom has as little emotional weight as physically possible. They refuse to let Ichiban have any characterization over how he feels about his mom or his parents or anything. Instead, he just insists over and over that she's just some woman that his boss liked, and that he's doing it out of respect. And even if we're supposed to believe that he's kind of being untruthful in that statement. There's only one half-ass scene in the entire game, very late into the game, a very short scene, where they share even the most mild, surface-level mother-son conversation. Ichi's character is not changed or explored in any way in this game over the fact that he is searching for or reuniting with his mom. And I think that's about it. It's hard for me to compare this to the last game. Yakuza 7 was something that I loved in concept. I love Ichiban, I love his journey, I love Saiko in the last game. I don't like her in this one. And all the shit about the homeless gang and banding together, taking care of Saiko, deciding what direction to take your life in after you're 40 and have no prospects. Loved all that shit, etc. But when I played the actual game, it was either what I was expecting it to be, or it was worse than I was expecting. And so I didn't particularly love the act of playing it. I know that sounds weird. It feels weird. It still feels weird to me that I really like a lot from 7, and I didn't get anything out of playing it. In comparison, Infinite Wealth is a game that, even before it came out, I thought the trailers looked iffy. I expected the game... I expected the game to be good, but I didn't see anything that I really loved in the trailers at all, and then yeah, upon playing the game, there's a few things that I liked, a few things I don't like. I think overall my experience was disappointed. Probably I had too high of expectations in the first place, but it still resulted in disappointment that it wasn't as good as I was hoping it would be. And I think my experience was maybe less disappointing than I felt finishing Yakuza 7, because Yakuza 7 had things that I strongly hated about the plot, and was seriously disappointed by, even though I still loved key elements of the game overall. This game maybe had less disappointment because I had no clear expectations for it, but I don't think it does anything as good as 7 did with its strengths. Gameplay, again, not sure. I love all the new mechanics for the gameplay, but I hate the levels and the fights, and all the fights are just super lackluster. They never push you to play the game at all. A lot of the fights bleed into each other and feel like going through the motions, just killing thousands of weak fodder enemies. Kinda like the turn-based equivalent of Yakuza 5. In Yakuza 5, you were way too fucking overpowered, and it's fun to do all your cool moves, but every fight is also just nothing. Overall, probably a good game. Good game. Mini-games are better than in 7, lots of fun stuff. I like the RPG elements, the class-building stuff like that. Dondoko Island is fun. The game is fun. It has shitloads of stuff that's fun in it, you know? And it has story beats that hit. It has likable enough characters. Kiryu's really good in this. I honestly can't complain that much about the resulting package, despite that I would have wanted it better in certain places, and I had maybe, like, very rose-colored expectations of it, but it's good. Good game. Probably. I don't know. It's hard to tell. That's about it. See ya.